Tilea's Troubles, Part 128. Admissions and Admonishments Abound. Verezzo, in the great hall of the Palazzo Davandati, autumn 2404. Barone Iacopo was feeling confident about the meeting with Lord Silvano Gondi of Pavona, especially as he had recently obtained firm promises of defensive military support from Verezzo's old ally, Ridrafa. He believed the joint forces that could thus be fielded against Pavona now matched the enemy's strength, perhaps even exceeding it. The mayor of Ridrafa had long been effectively a nominee of Verezzo. Lord Lucia himself had ensured the current mayor's position. This made the two states natural allies, and their shared suspicions of the Pavonans' aggression now made them keen allies also. Yet Ridrafa had not directly suffered Pavonan abuses as Verezzo had, and so of the two, the Ridrafans were considerably less keen to go to war. Still, Iacopo was glad the mayor was present, so that Lord Silvano would recognise that he was now contending with two city-states. Previously, the Barone had done all he could to strengthen Verezzo's forces, but progress was slow due to a combination of factors, including the small funds available and the limited numbers of experienced mercenaries to hire, considering most were contracted to other states. Verezzo was not the largest of city-states, and so even raising native militia proved difficult, for want of able youngsters to fill the ranks. Luckily, the long-standing tradition of teaching the art of archery to every male halfling in the realm still held, and so that part of the state's army was not deficient. Mayor Raphael was accompanied by his wife, Lorena, which was perhaps a little unusual, for this was to be a parley between warring states, not a social meeting, where one spouse would be expected. Yet, he thought, her presence might lend a degree of civility to the process. The Barone was familiar enough with the young Lord Silvano to know that he was less likely to give vent to unrestrained anger before a noblewoman, and certainly not commit an act of assassination like a Pavonan soldier had done only weeks before. Indeed, Iacopo was hoping that she might have an inhibiting influence on his own behaviour, for he harboured furious hatred towards the Duke, and, by association, the Duke's obedient son. He wanted to remain in control, to play a subtle game and play it well. Lorena's presence would hopefully provide a check against any sudden bursts of anger. As well as Captain Muzio Vanni, the old condottieri commander of the Pike Regiment, now made Lieutenant General of Verezzo's army, the famous ex-brigand Roberto Capuccio was also present, for it was he who had most recently been the subject of Pavonan lies. Upon his return to Verezzo, after his sojourn through the realm of Pavona with his band of archers, causing as much trouble as he could, which turned out to be quite a lot, Barone Iacopo had rewarded Capuccio's commitment by commissioning him as Verezzo's Scout Master General. Capuccio had since begun wearing the livery of Verezzo, although still sported his famous green hat, and he never went anywhere without his trusty bow. When the infamous Pettirosso came into the hall, the Barone was pleased to witness momentary surprise, then discomfort, upon the young Lord Silvano's face. To make such a fellow an officer of the state surely revealed the strength of the Barone's hatred of Pavona, and strongly hinted that he knew the truth concerning the claims of the recent assassination attempt upon Duke Guidobaldo. The young lord was accompanied by a single guard, armed with a handgun, although he had travelled with a large company of similarly armed soldiers. Perhaps, if he had attempted to bring more guards to the meeting, then objections might have been raised, but no one thought to complain about a single companion, as such might be considered a necessary servant to accompany a nobleman, with duties beyond merely acting as an armed escort. "So, your father has finally deigned to send you to me, as I demanded many weeks ago," said the Barone. "I was not happy that he sent a babbling priest to me before, only for one of your own soldiers to slay him." "I myself wanted to come," answered Silvano, "and my father, ill though he is, at last gave me leave to do so. As for the soldier's actions, I know not what came over him. He clearly had the wrong idea concerning what was expected of him." Barone Iacopo fixed his eyes upon the Pavonan lord. "Oh, I think he knew full well what was expected of him, be it nothing more than to make more of a mockery of the supposed apology." I wish, Barone, you would not presume such wickedness on my father's part. Mistakes have been made, but this time the guilt was that of a foolish guard. Are you here, then, to confess your father's sins and pray publicly for forgiveness? Or are we to play more cruel games, and hear yet more excuses and lies? Good Barone, said Silvano, I humbly and honestly wish to forge a peace between our realms, in light of the new and deadly threats facing all of us. We cannot allow our realms' disagreements to weaken us in such dangerous times. Iacopo and several of his other attendants laughed. And why should I believe you want peace, when your own father murdered our beloved Lord Lucia and plundered this, his realm, even at a time when both vampires and ogres threatened all Tilea? Your father had long sought any excuse to attack Verezzo, a despicable and base yearning he finally yielded to at the most dangerous time. The young lord stiffened, and when he spoke, his words were uttered likewise. I am not my father. Iacopo was quick to respond. An apple does not fall far from the tree. You know me, Barone. We marched together and took the field beside each other in the valley of Naroccia, there to face hordes of ghouls and walking corpses, and with arrows, bullets, swords, and great courage we did prevail. You and I and those we commanded proved ourselves that day. You know me. Aye, you were there, countered the Barone, but not your father. He was too busy robbing our realm, murdering our master. The brigand Pettirosso suddenly interrupted. I saw him and his knight slay Lord Lucia with mine own eyes. And all heard his lies afterwards, added Iacopo, claiming it was the VMC soldiers who had disguised themselves as Portamajorans to do the deed. And now, spat the Pettirosso, your father lies again, telling the world it was myself who attempted to assassinate him. I wish that it were, and that I had succeeded, for then vengeance would have been gained. But it was not I, despite my vow to do so, making his claims yet more lies. There was silence, though there was something about the young lord's demeanour that gave the impression it was not due to him being stuck for words. Iacopo broke the silence with a direct challenge. I ask you, in earnest, is everything your father utters false? Has he ever spoken a word of truth? Lord Silvano began silently, slowly, shaking his head, and this time answered with the slightest hint of anger in his voice. I am not my father, but I rule now in his stead, and will rule in my own right when my father enters Moore's Garden. Pavona's present and future lie with me. I was never party to my father's lies, nor present when they were spoken, only later learning of them. Now I look to find those willing to befriend me, not my father. The Pettirosso was pointing at the young lord, quite contrary to what was customarily expected when addressing a noble superior, even of another city-state. So, you admit your father was lying? Silvano answered easily. I do, as did my father to General Valkenburg, through me, having tasked me with explaining all that was done and why. Lord Silvano, asked Iacopo, you would have us believe that we can trust you. How is it that you are made so much better than your father? Or is it that you are a good enough liar to make it appear so? Since the war against Prince Girenzo and the death of my brother, said Silvano, I have always striven to do that which was right and proper, and to venture my own life in the defence of greater Tilea, not just Pavona. I have served the greater good and holy Moor, both demanding and receiving permission to do so from my father. All I ask is that you judge me by my own merits. Iacopo put his hands on his hips and looked askance at Silvano. You did nothing more than the good Captain Vanni here and myself, serving in the Alliance army under Lord Alessio, upon the orders of your lord and master. Why should we presume your good service makes you a more honest man? Even a goblin might obey his brute master's commands, yet still lie with almost every utterance. The Mayor of Ridrafa's wife gave a polite cough, and all turned to look at her. By your leave, Barone and my Lord Silvano? She asked. Both nobles nodded. Naroccia was not the only time the young lord fought against the vampires, she continued. He was at the terrible battle of Urbino, personally leading the charge against the enemy's massed ranks. There His Holiness Callictus died, and the army scattered, forcing Lord Silvano to ride away. Then having only just recovered from near-fatal wounds received when bravely fighting Bouldergut's brutes in the Battle of Via Dea Cleta, he marched with you, my lord, in the Alliance army to fight the vampires once again. Is all this not entirely adequate proof of Lord Silvano's earnestness to serve the common good?" Iacopo had forgotten that the mayor's wife had Gondi blood, being a cousin to Duke Guidobaldo. It seemed she possessed a great interest in her relations' affairs, or perhaps just Lord Silvano's. Such a bias would hardly help her understand the duplicitousness the Gondis were capable of. And yet, it was hard to argue against her. Lord Silvano had indeed proven himself a hero in battle after battle. A thought now tickled at the edge of Iacopo's consciousness, concerning how the Duke had kept his son ever busy in the wars, or more accurately, why the Duke had done so. But the idea dissipated when Mayor Raphael spoke. "My wife speaks the truth, as you do too, Barone. There is good and bad in the Gondi family, as with any family perhaps, but we should surely not allow the faults and frailties of a dying man to prevent our proper defence of our realms." Lord Silvano turned to speak to Iacopo, but the Barone interrupted him, saying, "Yes, we know, you are not your father.